Justice Sri Krishna panel has submitted its report on data protection framework to the government, that is to the IT and Law Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad. The Sri Krishna panel proposes to set up a data protection authority that will act like a regulator and will have powers to decide on violations and the quantum of punishment. As far as the storage of data goes, Justice Sri Krishna rapped the RBI for already jeopardizing the data and leaving the door open for localization of data storage. It's also recommended to amend the Aadhaar Act significantly to bolster privacy protections. In fact, at a press conference, Justice Sri Krishna did say that the report takes cognizance of the Supreme Court considering privacy being a fundamental right. Before we go any further, let me just go across to my colleague Chandra Shrikant. She's joining us with more on this story. Hi Chandra, I was just reading, it's a long report. I was just reading it and it seems as if there is going to be a breach, and that's something people want to know about in case there's a violation. The report is recommending a penalty of almost 15 crore rupees or 4% of the worldwide turnover.
Right, Nantara, that's just one part of the report. The other important portions, of course, are on Aadhaar, on data localization and consent itself. Now, it of course talks about empowering citizens as far as consent is concerned. With respect to Aadhaar, they have given two important amendments. The first has to do with, really empowering the UIDAI to take action, and they are also saying that UIDAI will be viewed as a processor of data, so they will be subject to the same law with the same rigor. So I think that is an important point, and they said that significant amendments need to be made to the current Aadhaar law in order to. Okay, I believe we have a very important guest joining us on the phone line right now. We have Nandan Nilekani, Aadhaar architect, the co-founder of Infosys and chairman of Infosys, now joining us on the phone line, someone who's been tracking this debate very closely. Sir, thank you so much for talking to ET now. I want to start with your broad sense of, what you make so far. The report was released just a while back. What is your sense of what it's managed to achieve?
Well, first of all, it's a 213-page report, and understanding and internalizing all of it will take time. But I must say that the committee has done an outstanding job in coming up with both the report as well as a draft law. And I really like the fact that they have talked about that it is also about empowerment, and said that India has a fourth model, not the US model, not the European model, not the Chinese model, but a model of data empowerment, even as you provide privacy. And I think they have actually said that this could be a template for the global south. So I think they have taken an original direction, and so I think I congratulate Justice Sri Krishna and the committee members for focusing on protecting privacy and at the same time empowering Indians.
Right. Sir, I know it's 213 pages, even we are going through the fine print, but I want to take you across the portions on Aadhaar. It says currently the Aadhaar Act is silent on the powers of the UIDAI to take enforcement action against errant companies in the Aadhaar ecosystem. This includes companies wrongly insisting on Aadhaar numbers, those using Aadhaar for unauthorized purposes, and those leaking Aadhaar numbers, all of which have happened in the recent past. Each of these can affect informational privacy and requires urgent redressal. So they are saying some urgent changes need to be made. What do you make of that?
So I think they have given a very balanced opinion on Aadhaar. On the one point, on the one side, they have said that it requires the Act requirements, amendments to ensure the autonomy of the UIDAI. At the same time, they believe that UIDAI or the other, UIDAI need to have the powers to do enforcement. So, it's sort of simultaneously addressing that. But, I think it's also the fact that the UIDAI will now come under the larger framework of the Data Privacy Law and the Data Protection Authority, and it will also be subject to the same law. So I think at one hand it is strengthening the UIDAI by making it autonomous as well as by ensuring that it has the power to take errant behavior. At the same time, it comes under the data privacy law and under the data protection authority and the rigor of that. So I think it's a very, very balanced approach to taking the whole thing forward. And I'm sure that the Supreme Court will look at this draft as it comes out with the judgment on the Aadhaar case.
Right. So, in fact, as you said, they've taken a balanced view. So, in the two set of amendments with respect to Aadhaar Act, the first has to do with bolstering the right of privacy of individuals. So,
yes.
A critical obligation on all data fiduciaries. And second, you did say that they have said amendments are required to ensure the autonomy of the UIDAI. Now, in the last line, they said, Aadhaar as a method of identification, the need of the hour is a regulatory framework for the operation of Aadhaar. So are they saying that, UIDAI alone is not enough because it's just a platform? There needs to be a regulator above the UIDAI because you cannot have the same organization that's also making the rules and that's also regulating itself. Would this be the right way to interpret what Justice Sri Krishna has said?
Well, again, you're asking for instant opinion for a very long and very authoritative report. But the way I see it is that on the one hand, they are saying the Aadhaar Act should be, the UIDAI should be, should be autonomous and it should be able to enforce. For example, if there are requirements that Aadhaar number is not displayed, then and if somebody displays that, then UIDAI needs to be able to enforce that kind of errant thing. At the same time, I think it also says that UIDAI itself will come under the DPA, the Data Processing Authority. So to that extent, I think it also creates a situation where if somebody believes the UIDAI is not doing what it should, then they can appeal to the DPA. So I think it does both. Is what I read. I mean, again, as I said, there's all instant reading going on here.
Right. So just one more point on that. So basically you're saying that this in a sense makes the UIDAI more accountable than it is today because in the eyes of the data protection law, it will be viewed as an other entity processing personal data and it will be subject to the same rigors and penalties of the law.
Which I think is the right thing. I mean, if you're going to have a fundamental right to privacy and if you're going to have a Data Protection Act and we're going to have a Data Protection Authority which is there for the benefit of all the citizens and residents of India, then it would have to come within that framework, no?
Right. So, you have been someone who's been pushing for a data protection law right from 2009. You raised this with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and subsequently with PM Modi. Are you confident that, this will go through?
Well, they have done
Okay, May of 2010, you clearly will know the dates better.
No, I think May 2010 was when I wrote to the Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, about the law. So it's more than 8 years now. But I think the point is that I think this is a landmark event because you have a great report which talks about protecting privacy at the same time empowering Indians. So I think that's a very strong thing, and clearly saying that the Indian model is different from the European or the Chinese or the US model. And second, it also has given a draft law. Now, next thing, I think the next big event we have to wait for is the actual Aadhaar judgment from the Supreme Court. And it's entirely possible that that judgment may take notice of this report as well as the draft law and may make some comments that perhaps the government should look at passing a law within a certain time frame. So I think, this is there are two steps. The next step is the Aadhaar judgment. And then we have to see whether on top of that there will be some recommendation by the Supreme Court that the law should be passed. And then, of course, the law will have to be brought to Parliament and go through that process, which itself, can take some time.
Right, it can take some time. Some people are saying, a few months to a year. But what will this mean as far as that Aadhaar judgment in the Supreme Court is concerned? Are you, more optimistic? Are you sort of cautious at this point? Are you cautiously optimistic? What does today's data protection framework mean for the Aadhaar judgment, which is perhaps a few weeks away?
No, I think this, the very thorough job done by the Sri Krishna committee in defining the privacy, I think will help and will actually contribute to the court giving a balanced judgment on Aadhaar itself and taking into account the recommendations of this committee.
Right. Before I let you go, sir, this is not the first time we've had recommendations on privacy. The Justice A.P. Shah Committee too had laid out principles of privacy a few years back. Are you more hopeful that this time at least, there is more commitment to ensure that this doesn't just remain a report or a framework, but it will indeed become law, be it 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, depending on, when the Parliament decides to pass the law. But are you more hopeful this time around?
Well, to give you a timeline, in 2010 May, I wrote to the Prime Minister. Then the DOPT appointed a group and came out with a draft data privacy law. Then the Justice A.P. Shah Committee was set up to came out with privacy principles. And then, all that happened. So, many things have happened in the last 8 years. But I think now it is the end game because the Aadhaar judgment will come out. And I think between the Aadhaar judgment and the Sri Krishna committee report as well as the draft law, I think it lays the foundation for a law to happen. And as I said, it's entirely possible that getting a law to be passed may be a requirement of the judgment.
Right. So just a couple of points on the other portions that people were looking forward to. An important point on data localization. Sri Krishna Committee has said that, they will take a threefold approach.
The other part of it, Chandra, so I don't think I'll be able to answer anything else. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, sir. On that note then, thank you so much. Thank you so much for talking to us, sir.